Welcome in on this fine Wednesday evening, 10 o'clock in the East. And it's behind enemy lines time. I know that the 49ers season is on the brink, and the Packers have been winning, but playing a lot of close games. I'm not quite sure that their season is gone up to expectations, but we will find that out next, plus so much more. I've got a great guest with me tonight. Cannot wait to dive into this must-win game for the San Francisco 49ers, and we will get to it next. All right, welcome back to Last Second Sports. We are giving you our take down to the last second, and as I said, it's behind enemy lines night, and I'm bringing back a friendly foe, Andy. How you doing, my man? It's been a while since we talked. Playoff time.
Yep.
You doing good?
Doing great. Thanks so much for having me. You guys got the best of it last time, so I guess kudos to you on that. Hopefully we can flip the script this time, but I know this is like we were talking about offline. This is obviously a huge game for you guys at 5-5, missing some of those tiebreakers. So I'm excited for this one. I think it's a good measuring stick game for Green Bay, and it's probably pretty close to a must-win game for San Francisco as well. So this is going to have a lot of high stakes involved with it.
Yeah, I think that I also look at it from Green Bay's perspective, and the 49ers losing last week changes it slightly, but the Packers were in a situation that if the 49ers had won, and if the 49ers had won last week and then beaten Green Bay this week, they would own the tiebreaker. And
Yep.
I think a lot of people look at Green Bay from the outside in and be like, oh, they're in the playoffs. And not so fast. They might be in a situation where a wild card tiebreaker comes into question or comes into play. I don't know that it'll be with the 49ers anymore now that they lost to Seattle. But this would be a huge win in case they did end up with the same record. And it's possible that the 49ers may finish second in the division, but with the same record as the Packers and would have that tiebreaker. So I think it's a very important game for the Packers as well.
No, it really is. And I mean, I don't know how much you do with like the New York Times playoff simulator and things like that, but the difference in playoff percentage with a win for Green Bay is about 21% in this game. It goes to 93% if Green Bay wins this game. Like basically you beat San Fran and you've all but punched your ticket to the postseason unless something catastrophic happens. You lose, and they're still favorites. They're still like 72% favorites, but it's a 21% swing going in the opposite direction. And not only that, you mentioned again, before we were talking offline of how the 49ers losing some of those tiebreakers in the division and so on and so forth. The Packers are 4-0 against the AFC South. Like they just nuked, like everyone else has basically, the AFC South, right? And if you look though at their conference record, thankfully they again got that win against Chicago this past week, but they're 3-3 in conference. So you start to get, and they're 1-2 in the division with losses against both Minnesota and Detroit. So all of a sudden, those conference losses, Philly, they lost to, that could potentially be, problematic depending on how the rest of the season goes for them. So yeah, if you lose all of a sudden to San Francisco, and now San Francisco has a tiebreaker with you, yes, these are things that eventually could play into it. And you have to remember too, like, I would love to tell you and look you in the eye that like, yeah, the Packers still have a chance at winning the division, and Detroit doesn't seem like there's any signs of slowing down. And right now, Green Bay's third in the division behind Minnesota and Detroit. So they'd have to make a significant jump. And assuming that does not happen, they're going to be battling with these teams for wild card spots. And a loss here or there could definitely change the calculus for where they are in the standings.
Before we get into the topics I had at hand, this is a really good point that I had almost completely forgot about. That Robert Saleh is helping or aiding as an advisor with the Green Bay Packers. Great friends with LaFleur. I know that he was in LaFleur's wedding and all those things, which is significant because a lot of 49er fans wish that was something he had done and come back here, and that was not the case. He's played the 49ers this year. He obviously knows Shanahan very well. Do you look at this as a possible factor in this game?
Yes. So Matt LaFleur is pretty adamant whenever that he's asked that Robert Saleh is helping the offense only, that he is helping Matt LaFleur in the offense. So I do still think that comes in handy, right? And just being able to throw things off of Robert Saleh for how to game plan for this game, just in general. And I think that is going to play a really nice factor. And I think the smarter people that you can have in the room to throw ideas off of, I think just in general, you're going to be better for it, right? I also, as much as Matt LaFleur is very much saying, and he's doing it understandably because you have a first-year defensive coordinator and you've given him you want to give him full autonomy to do everything, and you don't want to have like anything where like all of a sudden he's like looking over his shoulder to be like, oh, is Robert Saleh right behind me? Like you don't want to create that friction, right? But you have to remember that Jeff Hafley and Robert Saleh have worked together. Jeff Hafley worked under Robert Saleh in San Francisco. Like it's not like these two are like don't know each other, don't have a connection, right? I can't imagine a world. Jeff Hafley is very down to earth. He is very easygoing. He's super easy to talk to. Like he's unbelievably communicative. I can't imagine a world in which Jeff Hafley's not like, hey, Robert, what do you think? Like, what are some of the things that you can tell me about this 49ers offense and what you've worked with Kyle Shanahan? Like, as much as it's, yes, he's consulting on the offensive side. In what world, if you're Jeff Hafley, do you not at least pick his brain on stuff this way? It has to happen, right? So I think it doesn't hurt, if nothing else. I don't know how much of a unbelievable impact it can make, but listen, if in the day and age where there's a 1 degree of difference between winning and losing, a literal tip of a middle finger away between winning and losing in the NFL, yeah, I'll take any advantage that he can possibly provide at this point.
Well, and you talk about 1 degree of difference. I mean, this is the 49ers have been in a lot of close games and they haven't won those close games. And the Packers are 6-1 in I believe games decided by 1 score or less. So it's like, or less, one score, not one. It can't be less than 1 score, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they're 6-1. They know how to win these games. The 49ers don't. And so that 1 degree very well may be the difference in this game. You got a team at home, you had the solid thing. So not something, I don't know why I didn't think about it, but that does play here. It definitely does play. So another thing that plays though is injuries. And I'll tell you from the 49ers side, tons of injuries.
Yep.
But they should be getting a lot of guys back. So last week, George Kittle was a late scratch. We found out late Saturday night going into Sunday morning that he was not going to play. He is going to play this week, according to him. He practiced today. He says he's going to play. He was close to playing last week. That's great. Charvarius Ward, who's been out due to personal reasons, he has returned to the team as well. It's likely that he's going to play. This will be CMC's 3rd week, so they're getting healthier there. But one player that is very, very iffy in playing is Nick Bosa. Now, he had an oblique injury going into the Tampa game. He heard it during that week of practice 2 weeks ago. I was at that game. He was grimacing between plays. It was clearly bothering him. He still entered last week's game with that oblique injury. And because he was overcompensating, he hurt the other oblique. And that's what kept him out of the final couple drives against Seattle. And we saw just how much of a difference that made. I don't know that Bosa plays this week. It really sounds like it's a 50-50. And I think there's a big chance he does not play. What do the injuries look like on the Packers side of the house?
Yeah, it seems like there's kind of one injury for both sides, and both are significant. Nick Bosa on the 49ers side is going to, I think, be the one to really keep an eye on. As you mentioned, Jair Alexander in Green Bay is the one to really keep an eye on. And he, in a very similar sort of way, he tried to go last week and play, and he played, I don't know, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 snaps somewhere in there to start the game. They had him on a snap count. He wasn't playing full time. There were times where he was taken out of the game and then went back in, and he just couldn't make it through the game. He didn't make it through, I think, even to the second quarter, and he went out, and he's been working on this knee injury that he thought clearly that he was going to be able to come back. They tried him out before the game. They gave him a snap count. It didn't work out, and you have to think they're going to be super cautious with him now, because the last thing you want, the worst thing that can happen, right, is like he says in the pregame, like, yep, I'm good to go. And then he can't play. And now you're down a player for the game. So I think if it's any sort of questionable again, that's just like, if it reads questionable and he hasn't practiced, it's just going to be out, I think, this week. So I think he's going to have to not only show that he might be ready, I think he's going to have to show that he is ready. And like, he's going to have to practice at some point this week. He did not practice today. He was the only Packer who did not practice in any capacity. So again, 2 big time players on both sides. I will say this, as a Packer fan, I will definitely trade no Jair Alexander for no Nick Bosa. I will take that trade 100 times out of 100. It's not that it's ideal for Green Bay with no Jair, but yeah, we'll have to keep a very close eye on both of those players.
Jair Alexander is, I remember 2 years ago, I was laying the claim that he was the best corner in the league. maybe it was 3 years ago over Ramsey. Like that, the
Right.
big debate was like Ramsey. And I'm like, no, listen, Jair Alexander's better, but he just cannot stay healthy. I don't know what his
Nope.
contract looks like, but I can't imagine he's in a Green Bay Packer uniform for too much longer with the health inconsistencies that he's had.
They do have an out this upcoming year. It's not great. Like they're gonna take a huge dead cap hit, but it's like
Mhm.
$6 million savings. I want to say somewhere in that regard if they would move on from him and if they would release him. So yeah, they'll have the option if they want to. It's not ideal, but yeah, when you get to the point where you're just missing 8 games a year, it becomes very problematic if you're not playing that much when you're making that much money.
Yeah, and Fernando brings up a great point here. He says Bosa might be in a similar situation to Jair, where he does play and then ends up having to leave early. So it's like,
Yep.
Sir Cash Money says 47-9 Niners for the win. Lock it in. I'm delusional. I think so. But we'll take it, man. We'll take it. Keith Murphy, the unbeaten, says, why has Kyle owned Matt? That's a good question. He definitely has owned that matchup. Do you think that there's any reason for that, or?
It's funny. Matt's owned McVay, but Kyle is owned Matt, and I don't know how McVay and Kyle have done against each other, but like it would be appropriate if McVay owned Kyle then in that situation, and there's just this like Bermuda Triangle thing going on. But no, I don't know. I think it's been with different quarterbacks in different seasons. It's been with Aaron,
Yeah.
it's been with Jordan, and they just have not been able to overcome San Francisco in any way. And it's been different, like completely different reasons in completely different games, right? You had the Mike Pettin game where their defense could not stop the running game against San Francisco in the playoffs whatsoever. Like you guys didn't even need to throw a pass with Jimmy Garoppolo in that game, and the 49ers won that easily. And then you obviously had the more recent one where you had the punt block at the end of the game in the playoffs. You had last year where Green Bay misses a field goal and then San Francisco goes down and Jordan throws the interception at the end. It's been different teams, different seasons, different coaches, different quarterbacks, different play, like in a totally different circumstances every time. And Green Bay just cannot figure out a way. And it's again the exact opposite against the Rams. Totally the same thing, except Matt completely owns that matchup. So, and these things are weird. The Packers have beat the Bears 11 times in a row, but they cannot get over the San Francisco 49ers. So from a Packers standpoint, hopefully this is the week for you guys. Obviously you're hoping that streak remains.
Well, I will say that the Seahawks had lost 6 straight to the 49ers, and they were able to break that streak last week. So this is not the 49ers that you're used to playing. I will say that. And also the only one loss for Jordan Love. So I don't think he has the emotional scars maybe that Aaron Rodgers would if he was still the quarterback.
Yeah, for the guy that always wanted to prove it wrong to San Francisco for taking Alex Smith over Aaron Rodgers, 0-4 in the playoffs, never really did that in any significant way. So yeah, no, that was ugly.
This one says, "Hi Jesse, hey, what's up, man?" And then Dave says 47-9. Lyle blows it completely. Packers walk on us. All right. I do have to ask about this, and this one I didn't understand from the outside looking in. I do know that schematically things changed, right? And so it sounds like maybe he wasn't a match for the current system, but the Packers, who are trying to do something special this year, were not buyers at all, but they just sold a depth piece off the roster to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Help me make sense of this one.
Yeah, so there's a couple different things at play here. The first and I think the biggest one to know is that Preston Smith actually requested a trade, which we didn't know at the time when the trade was made. And then he gave an interview in Pittsburgh when he went to Pittsburgh and said, yes, I actually requested a trade to go back to a 3-4 because I didn't feel like I was a fit in the 4-3 defense. And so that was, I think, a huge piece as to why they made the deal is because he requested the trade. I think furthermore, Preston was seeing his snaps cut pretty significantly to the point where in previous seasons, he had been a big, like 40 snap a game player. He was in the 20s. This is like the low 20s this year. And snap, it had been cut down to that range of like, he was playing 21, 22 snaps in his recent games before they had traded him away. So there's a little bit of like, they were starting to cut his snaps. Furthermore, he was not playing well in this 4-3 defense. For me, I go through and grade every player in every game. He was one of my lowest graded players on the team. It definitely did not feel like he was a fit for this team. And then there's a couple other things too, where there was financial savings. They obviously pick up a draft pick in the process. And I think they really did want to get some play out of Brenton Cox, the undrafted free agent from a year ago, who was originally slated to be a top 100 pick, had a bunch of off the field issues, went undrafted. The Packers took a flyer on him, redshirted him last season.
The Florida kid?
Yes. redshirted him last year, redshirted him all of this year. He played 5 snaps last year, didn't play any this year up until this point. And I think they really did legitimately want to give him a chance. He basically ate all 22 of those Preston Smith snaps this week and played them all. He had a sack and a tackle for loss. Both of them were completely unblocked. Both of them completely unblocked. So it was great that he got him, but it's not like he overcame anything of substance in either of those situations. So I think the trade request, him not playing well, him wanting to be in a 3-4, the scheme not really being a fit, some financial savings, picking up a draft pick and getting Brenton Cox playing time. I think all of that together was enough for Goody to say, all right, let's do the deal.
Well, thank you for answering that. Cause I remember texting with friends, was like, okay, Preston Smith. And then immediately I thought, oh God, they're going to get like Max Crosby or something.
I know,
like,
right?
This is a setup. You know,
would have been nice.
Oh my gosh, please don't let that happen. This is going to be insane if Max Crosby ends up over there. But it just didn't happen. And so to me, I'm like, oh, it's a good player still, I believe, unless something has. So that makes total sense. I totally understand that. And actually, good on the Packers for taking that request and following through and just like, yeah, man, we'll grant you your request. Because I don't think a lot of organizations would be like, no, you're staying.
And I think if he was playing better, like I think if he was playing at the level that we've been used to seeing Preston play at and things were going well, I think maybe they would have been like, dude, no, we need you. I'm sorry. Like we need you for the remainder of the season. We'll work something out in the off season or something like that. But I just think the fact, I think from both sides, they could probably tell that this just wasn't a great fit for Preston. And I think it just kind of got to the point where for both sides, it just kind of made sense.
I've got a 2-parter here, but we'll start with the season as a whole. Based off of what Packers fans' expectations were, and I got to imagine they were pretty high, and there's some big pundits that picked them to go to a Super Bowl this year.
Yep.
So the talented roster, they shook the world up last year, really quote unquote overachieved, and that means that expectations this year were going to be lofty. Now, I don't know how lofty those expectations were within the Packer fan base, but you definitely would have a pulse on that. Do you think right now, at this point in the season, that the Packers as a team have lived up to the expectations that fans had coming into the season?
No, I don't think so yet. And I think the number one mandate, right, is growth from a season ago. And I think that was the biggest expectation of like, yes, in Green Bay, there's always that hope of like a Super Bowl season, right? But when you go and really kind of shock the world last year, especially the way that they started and make that run into the playoffs and then get in the playoffs, beat Dallas pretty easily in Dallas, and then really give San Francisco everything that they can handle to the point where you can make an argument. There's a good chunk of that game where it looked like Green Bay probably should have won that game. It's not taking away anything from San Fran. Nobody cares about should have. San Francisco outplayed them in the end and won the game. But there's a good chunk of that game where you felt like, yeah, Green Bay probably should have won it. To have that, and then your hope is obviously they didn't really lose anything of major substance. They brought in Josh Jacobs and Xavier McKinney, obviously losing Aaron Jones, but bringing Josh Jacobs in is a more than suitable replacement in that situation. Bringing in Xavier McKinney, a full draft class, all their young players got a year more of experience. And so I think growth is really what the key is. And I mean, if you're looking at growth from a team that was this close to an NFC championship game when they weren't even expecting it, that's still there's high expectations in that realm, right? I think a variety of things have played out this season. I think, first of all, you had a really weird, bizarro Brazil game to open the season against a really good team in Philadelphia with an extremely slippery field. Week 1 is always bizarre anyway. Philly, I think, outplayed Green Bay. Give them credit, give them the win. But I think that was a weird game. And then you have, of course, have Jordan take the big MCL injury at the end of that game that looked like it maybe was going to be a lot worse. Thankfully, it wasn't. But then you get games against Indianapolis and Tennessee without Jordan Love. You win both of them with Malik Willis. But then Jordan comes back against Minnesota, clearly was not himself. You go down 28-0.
Shouldn't have played in that game.
Probably shouldn't have, right? But clearly was not himself. You can kind of, again, take that out of what they should be because it just wasn't him. They win fairly easily against the Rams, win easily against the Cardinals, win against the Houston Texans, which now those Rams, Cardinals, Texans wins they look pretty solid on paper now.
They do.
You go to Jacksonville and he gets the groin injury just when he was starting to be oh, yep, he looks like Jordan again. First drive of the game, injures his groin, doesn't play well at all for the next quarter, and then can't play anymore, gets taken out of that game. Malik Willis comes in, once again, does a magic act, comes up with a win against Jacksonville. You then come back, he plays against Detroit, does not look completely like himself again, recovering from the groin injury, gets a really good Detroit team. Detroit, it's 24-14, but Detroit had that game in the bag the entire time. Green Bay was not super competitive in that game. But again, Jordan's not himself. You get the bye, and then you're still like, Jordan was fine. It was a weird game against Chicago. You find a way to pick up the win. But this just been the weirdest, most bizarre, no rhythm, no consistency. Your quarterback's out, your quarterback's in, but he's not healthy. He's finally getting healthy. Now he has another injury, and there's just a weird circumstances around it. So I think they haven't gotten any sort of rhythm whatsoever. They can just finally get Jordan, and he does seem healthy now, and this offense going, and like everything kind of on the same page. I think it can still take off, but I think for the most part, based on how everything's gone, 7-3 is like, we'll take it. Like we're good with it, but you can tell they're not playing to the expectations that you kind of had for them going into the season, at least not as of yet.
Yeah, I don't think that I need to give you a big lesson on what's happened with the 49ers season, but 5-5 is clearly not living up to the expectation that the 49ers had. But the 49ers are in an interesting situation because they're in an evaluation process as well with Brock Purdy. It's like the season within the season. And you would know a lot about this because Jordan Love got a very hefty contract this last offseason. I think they structured it pretty well the way that I look at it, way better than Miami did with Tua, in my opinion. But ultimately, Jordan Love did get a lot of money. He looked very, very good towards the tail end of last year. But it was just 1 year. You didn't have a big sample size. And now Jordan Love is one of the more dynamic quarterbacks in the league, but he's also very turnover prone. And he has this bad habit, which is helpful when you don't. Last year, when he was being pressured a lot, I think that he relied on throwing off the back foot almost out of necessity to buy himself that extra half tick to get the ball off.
Yep.
But this year, I think he's being protected pretty well. I think the offensive line's done a pretty good job. And he still has this habit of falling off his back foot, even when there's nobody around him. And sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, did you see that throw? He dropped in the basket 50 yards downfield. And then other times, like, well, he had a throw 7 yards in front of him and he airmailed it and it turns into an interception in the red zone like last week. What are the thoughts on Jordan Love? Is the fan base like, yes, he's our guy, or is there people like, man, I don't know, did we make a mistake? What is the pulse there on that?
I think for the most part, people understand that he's the guy. And I think there's still some growth and learning curve. And I think the injuries have played a major part in this. And just, if nothing else, sort of clouding the evaluation so far this year. Yeah. And maybe it would have been the same no matter what. Maybe it would have been better. I doubt it would have been worse. But like, I think that just puts a little bit of doubt into like, is what we've seen really the real Jordan Love, or is the real Jordan Love more the one that we saw at the end of last year? The one thing I will say is like his interception sort of profile this year has been a lot less to do with his mechanics and a lot more to do with some poor decisions, which isn't necessarily better. In fact, it's probably worse. But it has been more to do with his decision-making than his mechanics. And I do think there is a couple things. One where I don't think he was wanting to take some of those hits with the injuries that he had quite as much. It was maybe a little bit less like able to sort of escape, and then maybe more willing to just kind of throw one up there because he didn't want to take another big hit when he was already suffering from a couple different injuries. Even this past game, you could tell he was so much more mobile and able to get outside of the pocket and wasn't taking, to me, he didn't have a poor decision in the entire game this past week against the Bears. A bad throw, but not a poor decision. So that was a step in the right direction. But I think that is a reason why it's a little bit been tough to evaluate him. And then I think the other thing is you become, at least at the time, I think Dak is surpassed him now, but the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. And I think there's a level of maybe pressure / expectation that comes with that. And now all of a sudden, it's not like, I don't want to just be a game manager. I don't just want to take the easy throws. Like, I've got to go make some plays. I got to go live up to this contract. And I think sometimes whether he's testing the outer realms of what his powers can be, of like, can I get away with some of this stuff, or just trying to maybe do a little bit too much to maybe live up to that expectation. I think that can kind of prey on a young quarterback as well. So to me, if this continues, if we do see, because we've seen an interception from Jordan every single game he's played so far this year, regardless of the type of interception it's been, whether it's been poor decision or bad throw, we've seen one per game. One of them wasn't even his fault against Arizona. Just the guy fell down. It happens, right? But we've seen one per game. If that continues, if that's the Jordan that's who he's going to be the remainder of his career, then yeah, that probably is not going to lend itself to the level of success that I think you're hoping for when you give him that big contract. I don't think that's who Jordan is as a player. I think he's a better decision maker than that. I think we'll see that in the long term, but he's got a little bit more Brett in him than he does Aaron, and he's more willing to take some of those chances from time to time. I don't hate that. I don't mind that, but the positives need to outweigh the negatives. And I think that's where you're just toying with it a little bit now and trying to find that right balance. I think he finds it in the second half of this year, and hopefully he can stay healthy and we'll get that evaluation. But I do think it's going to be interesting to see how he does play the rest of the year to get that evaluation.
Yeah, I think it's hard because Jordan Love's been in the league for a while, but as far as playing time goes, I mean, it really takes, in my opinion, 3 full years to really understand what a player is. Like
Yep.
3 full played years, and then you got a pretty good idea. And even sometimes then you get it wrong. Baker Mayfield's a great example. Carson Wentz is another one. So you just never know. And he's going through that. Also, try, like you said, trying to see what he can get away with is hard to do when you're making $60 million because everybody wants you to be perfect at that point. So it is a lot of pressure. I will say this, you guys have been so dang lucky with quarterbacks in the sense that not only have you gotten good players, and we'll see what Love ends up being, but just from a pure entertainment value. I mean, as when I grew up, Brett Favre was like the bane of the 49ers existence. He
Yep.
was winning 3 straight MVPs, and I was a Steve Young guy, but Brett Favre was must-watch TV. You had to watch. If Brett Favre was playing, you had to watch. Felt like Aaron Rodgers was the same way. And I feel like Jordan Love is also the same, where it's like, man, if he's playing, like you're tuning in. It doesn't necessarily make them the best quarterbacks, but it does make them very entertaining. And I think that you guys have been spoiled not only from a good quarterback perspective, but an entertaining quarterback perspective. So enjoy it.
No, for sure. And there's multiple sides of this. And I think the first thing I will say is yes, it's a million percent more leaning on the side of spoiled, and we are very appreciative of it. I will say also, when you have Brett and then Aaron, and then to an extent now Jordan, the expectation almost every single year is Super Bowl, right? Like
Yeah.
there have been very few seasons in Green Bay where Super Bowl has not been the expectation going into the year, or at least like having a feeling of like it at least could happen. Maybe it's not expected, but like it's not out of the question. Like you've got an unbelievable quarterback and you could go and do it. And what I will say is you've got 2 Super Bowls to show for it. But my goodness, have some of the heartbreaking losses from a Jerry Rice non-fumble
Yeah,
to
I
a
remember that
Terrell
one.
Owens from Steve Young in the back of the end zone to, I mean, some of these are just 49ers centric in and of themselves. Obviously the block punt a couple years ago, the game last year, 4th and 26 against Freddie Mitchell and the Philadelphia Eagles, the NFC Championship game where you fumble the
Seahawks,
onside
too.
kick with Brandon Bostic, the New York Giants NFC Championship game in frozen Lambeau Field with Tom Coughlin's cheeks puffing out and looking as pink as can possibly be, where Favre throws the interception to Corey Webster at the end. There have been a share of the most heartbreaking possible playoff losses. And I think I'm honestly forgetting like 10 just because I've blacked out the remainder of them. There have been some of the most heartbreaking playoff losses that you could possibly. The play against Arizona, where it goes into overtime, Rodgers and Kurt Warner have the unbelievable duo, and then Rodgers gets face masked, the ball goes off of his foot, and they return it for a touchdown. The Hail Mary play to Jeff Janis, where then the Cardinals get the ball first in overtime, immediately go down and score, and the game's over there. Like we can go on and on and on, and like the amount of just like unbelievable play, like heartbreak from some of those. The 2 Super Bowls you don't apologize for. The MVP quarterback play for 30 plus years you don't apologize for. Like we are spoiled and lucky, but it has had its pain points along the way as well.
You got, geez, that is a lot of tough losses. I remember the mystique of Lambeau, and when it really wore off was when Michael Vick and the Falcons came to town and beat him, and Lambeau was like,
I was there.
"Whoa,
I
you
was
can
there.
win? You can? Oh, you were at that game? Okay." I was like, "Wow, you can actually win in Lambeau? That's a thing." And I feel like ever since then, people are like, "Yeah, you can win in Lambeau. It's all right."
45-year-old Hardy Nickerson. It wasn't 45, but he looked like he was 75. 75-year-old Hardy Nickerson that had no knees left. His knees were just gone, trying to chase 22-year-old prime Michael Vick. And like, it was the like most ridiculous. Like he might as well have just been like, somebody might as well have like wheeled him, trying to like wheel them to Michael Vick. Like it was a nightmare.
Absolutely. Dave says, "Are Green Bay fans happy about the Jones-Jacob swap, essentially?"
I think people are extremely thrilled
yeah.
with the way that Josh Jacobs has played so far. I think losing Aaron Jones, who is literally called by the team and by Coach LaFleur the heartbeat of the team, and just the most consummate professional, unbelievable locker room guy, coolest dude in the world, nicest guy in the world. And then obviously an unbelievable running back. To not only lose him, but then to lose him to the Minnesota Vikings, man, that sucks. That stings all the way around. And he's having a really nice year in Minnesota. So like, there's no way that that doesn't sting. But what Josh Jacobs has been fantastic so far. He's been everything as advertised, and he's brought a lot to the table and has been, knock on wood, entirely healthy so far. Jones has had a couple nicks and bruises that have kept him out of some plays in some games. So I think it's everything that you could have possibly hoped for, but it, again, doesn't sting any less when you lose a player like that.
Jacobs looks, sometimes players look just kind of weird in other uniforms. I don't know what it is about the Packer uniform, but it's like, it's almost like his jersey fits him like a t-shirt and it's just whatever. But you got a younger player, play. I mean, that it's just, yes, especially at the running back age. I mean, come on, man, that was a clear win for them. Yes, clear win.
Yep.
Dave says Matt did what Lyle never did, which is develop and use a young quarterback. Okay. And then he says, like and subscribe to both channels, show support. Yeah. Speaking of, Andy's channel is pinned to the top of the chat, Pack a Day Podcast. Make sure you go show him love. Like I always say, if nothing else, just to troll them if the 49ers win. And if not, then, don't troll, because you'll get trolled. Brother Bob says, so what you're saying is love is trash to mid. I don't think that's at all what he's saying, Brother Bob. Thank you, though. And then Dave says, Brother Bob is coming, so I will start trade Lyle. They call Kyle Shanahan Lyle. They want to get rid of him. Yeah. Brother Dave says, damn, he beat me to it. What up? BB is killing it. And then Brother Bob says, Dave, trade, just fire him. Fire that fool now. He is mid too, talking about Kyle. And then Dave says, got to be worth a kicker, Brother Bob, or something. And then RJ comes in and says, keep seeing Kyle photoshopped in Bears gear out here on these Twitter streets. There's no way y'all are moving on from Shanahan, right? This is a Pack a Day listener. Thank you, RJ. I appreciate it. I don't think so. I don't think it's possible. If they were to move on, I do think that they would try to go the trade him route. I just don't see, the only scenario I see Kyle Shanahan being gone is if he's lost the locker room. And I don't know that there's indication that that's happened.
So I was actually going to ask this. Is it, I know it sounds like this is a real thing, that there's frustration in the Kyle Shanahan streets in San Fran. And Purdy frustration as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, here's the thing about Brock Purdy is, again, we're trying to decide, should he be paid $60 million? I'm an advocate that he shouldn't be paid this kind of money. Because unless you're a clear franchise quarterback, you're elite, you're a game changer, I don't think that any quarterback is worth it. I don't know that I would have, I think Love has all the tools to be great, but I haven't seen it yet. So I think that's risky. Tua, I think, was an awful situation. You've got Dak. The list goes on and on and on. I think that Brock is closer to Baker Mayfield than he is a Josh Allen. And I would be very comfortable with, let's say, 45 million. So that's the conversation at hand there with Brock. And then with Shanahan, we're talking about year number 8. Expectations are over the top. They should be making their final run to the Super Bowl. They signed all these guys in the offseason, extended them, reworked their deals, did everything they could to be competitive this year. And they're 5-5. People are super disappointed. They're losing close games. Kyle Shanahan is the 7th worst coach in NFL history in close games, which isn't great. So a lot of people are just starting to take notice and are frustrated. I personally would advocate for not firing Kyle. I think that he deserves one more year. He's earned that at the very least. He's been in 4 NFC championships. As far as Brock, I would make him play out his contract next year. He does have one more year on his contract where he's inexpensive. Maybe they can work out a Love situation where they give him more money so that he's happy, but don't give him the big extension so they can watch it play out. But there's a lot of conversation at hand. When you're not winning and you're supposed to, things get crazy. And it has definitely gotten crazy within our fan base for sure. A lot of different opinions.
How much does this change if Jimmy Garoppolo just hits Emmanuel Sanders?
Well, listen, one Super Bowl changes everything. It really does, man. And if Kyle Shanahan had a Super Bowl, then nobody's having these conversations. He's got a lifetime membership, but he didn't, and he
Yep.
continuously blows these leads in big games. You know, we saw it with the Falcons. Obviously, he wasn't the head coach there, so we can remove that. But he did it against the Rams in the NFC Championship. Did it twice against the Chiefs, where he had a 10-point lead. He blew the 10-point lead, and then when you peel the onion back even further, out of 125 qualifying coaches with at least 40 games decided by 7 points or less, he is 118th out of 125 in win percentage rankings. So that's not good. Like, he clearly has an issue winning close games. And the NFL is decided by close games. The 49ers have been very fortunate. They've had this great roster and they've blown teams out. That is not realistic to always do. So when it comes time to coaching and making tough decisions in tight games, can he get it done? And I think that's a real question that needs to be answered.
If you could just play the Packers in the Super Bowl, you guys would be totally fine since you win
Oh,
that
wow.
matchup every single time. So no blowing. No, yeah. Could you blow one of those every once in a while, Kyle, please? Could you figure that out? Jerk.
Well, we're gonna find out this week, because this week's game, I believe, is going to be very close, and maybe this is the game where he can get over the hump. But yeah, maybe
Maybe.
not, because the Packers do know how to win. They do know how to
Maybe.
win these close games. So, give me a player or two that we as 49er fans really should get to know, that maybe we're not familiar with. A younger player, a guy that's contributing kind of out of nowhere. Just one of those players that you think might make an impact on Sunday.
Yeah, I'll give you two names. One you know, one you may not be as familiar with,
Okay.
that I think are going to be ultra important in this game. The one
Okay.
that you know already, I'll do that one first, and that is not going to be a surprise to anyone, but is Rashawn Gary. And the reason
Yeah.
that I bring up Rashawn Gary is because he's had a pretty mid season. It's been fine. It's been nowhere near up to his standards, but he's shown a few more signs of life as of late. But he's about the only guy that is really providing any sort of real pass rush to any extent at all. And even he is well below what you would want him to be at this point.
Mm.
But you obviously have Trent Williams. So like anyone that's going up against Trent is going to have a basically non-existent day at the office more often than not. But if Rashawn Gary cannot get going, then Green Bay's pass rush is really, really tough. And you guys know if Brock needs a, get, whether it's a get right game or just like has the ability to really tear you apart, give him time in the pocket, get those receivers open. You've got Christian McCaffrey, like then that's when things can start really cooking for San Fran. So to me, if Rashawn is just having one of those games where he can't do a whole heck of a lot or gets matched up with Trent Williams a lot, I think it could be a long day for Green Bay. And I think Brock Purdy could have a lot of time to throw in this game. This pass rush for Green Bay has been really, really bad and basically the Achilles heel of the entire team. We've seen Jeff Hafley be very aggressive because of it. A lot of extra blitzing. I'm sure San Francisco will be well prepared for it. Chicago was last week. And really, Green Bay could not get home with the blitz. So I think that's one name to keep an eye on that you probably know. Another name that you may know because he was a second-round pick this year, but he's a rookie, is Edgerrin Cooper. Here's the thing with Edgerrin Cooper. He is an absolute stud of an athlete. I mean, we're talking bona fide freak, and he is as fast as you can possibly imagine and can shoot a gap just like it's different. It absolutely looks different on tape. And this is obviously, I know you guys are well aware of what a freak inside linebacker can look like. So I don't need to tell you guys, but he is an absolute stud when it comes to his pure athletic ability. However, he is very much a rookie, and we have seen him blow some assignments, line up in the wrong gaps. Like we have seen some things where it's like the ultimate wild card. You might get a play out of Edgerrin Cooper that you're just like, I cannot believe that a human being made that play and he just made that freaking play. And then there's other plays where you're like, can you just line up the right way? Like that would, or can you just cover the guy that you're supposed to? That would be really nice in this scenario. So there are ways that you can take advantage of them, and you might on one play be like, "Oh, we just got the best of Edgerrin Cooper," and then the next play out of nowhere, he's forcing a fumble, recovering it. Who knows what he's going to do? So he's really fun. He's going to be, I think, a great player, but he is young and a rookie, and there are those rookie mistakes kind of a lot. So it's just a complete wild card where you just never know what you're quite going to get. So I would say those are the two really big ones to keep an eye on.
Well, I'm sure that you're licking your chops offensively to play Devondre Campbell,
Yes.
because oh my gosh, this
Could have
dude
told you
is
that before the
awful.
season. Could have
Oh
told you
my,
that before the season.
oh geez, this guy. Anyways, I'll give you a couple players to look out for that are making a major impact for the San Francisco 49ers right now. Also, two rookies. Second round pick Bernardo Green. He's
Loved him coming
earned
over.
his way. Yeah, he's very, very good player, man. Very sticky in coverage. He's earned his way onto the field, which is different because Kyle Shanahan is really reluctant to play rookies. And in fact, he brought in Isaac Yadam and Rock Ya-Sin to be the veterans. They were supposed to be the third corners and play outside and allow Demo to play inside when they would go nickel. But man, Renardo Green has forced his way on the field, and he has been so good. Last week was the first week that I really wanted to see him get a lot of snaps and do it against a really good receiving core. Man, he held up very, very well. So Renardo Green he's a game changer for us on defense. He's very, very stout in coverage. And I think with the Packers receivers, you guys have so many good ones. Four, maybe five really good receivers, in my opinion. Very different, but all of them can make plays. The 49ers are going to need as many bodies as they can get at the corner position. And Renardo Green, I have a lot of confidence in him. And the other one is starting right guard Dominic Pooney. He didn't force his way onto the field, but he forced their hand as far as staying on the field. It took 2 injuries during the offseason for him to get on the field. Spencer Burford was supposed to be the starting right guard. He broke his hand. John Feliciano was the backup. They rotated last year. He had some sort of knee injury, so he missed time. And it allowed Dominic Pooney to come in, and he just never looked back. He is arguably, as great as Trent Williams is, arguably our best offensive lineman right now. He is absolutely incredible. And what stood out to me was 2 weeks ago against Vita Vea. He was able to hold his own, more than hold his own. He won that matchup most of the time. Very, very impressive for a rookie. So those 2 players right now are making a big time difference. So those are guys that I would look out for on the Packers side.
Yeah, you guys had one of my favorite draft classes. I was a huge Pearsall guy, I was a huge Pooney guy, and I was a huge Green guy. I liked all 3 of those guys. I wasn't a huge Mustafa guy, but I liked him. How's he doing, by the way? I think he's having a nice season, right?
He is, yeah. He's a lot like you described your linebacker, where he's a flash in the flash in the pan. He'll hit you, he'll cause a big fumble, he'll get the crowd rocking, and then he's going to completely blow an assignment. So he's a little bit hit and miss himself.
Yeah, that's kind of what I saw a little bit on tape too. But man, those first 3 picks, I'm just like, you've got to be kidding me. Of course, like 3 of the guys that I absolutely, and I mean, loved in this draft. Like all 3 are going to go to San Fran. I'm like, really? All 3 of those. If you're like, everyone has like their guys, all 3 of those guys were on my list of my guys, and San Francisco gets all 3. I'm just like, you've got to be joking me. So no, that doesn't surprise me that any of those 3 guys are playing well. I know Purcell obviously had the bizarro incident and took some time to get back in, but I still think he's going to be a really good player for you guys as time goes on. So we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you kind of already gave a weakness into the Packers. So I'll just ask you, what is the strength of the Packers? Where is an area that you feel just super confident that the Packers can take advantage in this game?
I'll give you one other weakness just really quick. Their red zone offense, so very similar to San Francisco's. They're in the same vicinity. They're right next to each other. Both of them have been really, really bad so far this year.
The whole coaching tree, by the way. Have you noticed this? Miami and the Rams as well. Yeah.
Great too. Yeah. So it's all right there. And I think defenses are just really honed in on what these teams are doing, not just in the red zone, but in general. But outside of that, between the 20s, you just have not been able to stop Green Bay almost at all this year. Detroit did to some extent, but for the most part, I mean, man, in between the 20s, they can move the ball pretty much with ease. They can run the ball, they can throw the ball, they can go play action. You can do Malik Willis. You can build a whole offense for Malik Willis, and he'll move the ball down the field. Matt LaFleur is just generally a step ahead and going to know how to attack just about anything that you throw at him, and he's going to find a way to move the ball. Unfortunately, due to kicker issues earlier in the season and then red zone issues as of more late, the point production hasn't been where you've wanted it to be. But if that gets cleared up, there's the only thing stopping Green Bay for the most part has been Green Bay, especially when it comes to red zone and field goal kicking. But man, do they know how to move the ball, and they can find ways to get explosive plays on you too. So that is something that they are very, very adept at.
You guys are still having kicker issues?
Not anymore. It's been better since Brandon McManus has been. He's only missed 1 kick, knock on wood. So, but earlier,
at least you got a veteran finally. A veteran you can rely on. McManus is a guy who's been around for a while. Yeah, so at least you got
when it was Braden Narvison, he was missing everything. So yeah.
Gosh. Well, and who was the old one? Carlson.
Anders Carlson. You had Carlson
for. We had him for a little bit. Yeah. He actually was decent, and he made a long one for the Jets. So who knows? But I was like, oh, okay. So for the 49ers, man, there's a lot of weaknesses right now. The 49ers, from a yardage standpoint, everything looks great. But I'm telling you, this season, every yard seems like it's so hard to gain. It's just like guys are making catches in traffic. Brock Purdy has to make like the most amazing throw just to complete a basic pass, or Jennings has got to go make an acrobatic catch just to complete the most basic of passes. The run game since CMC's come back has been very hit or miss. They get into the red zone, they're just not scoring whatsoever. Everything just seems really hard for this offense, which is crazy. Yes, they've lost some players, but man, there's still so much talent, and Kyle Shanahan is still the coach. It's completely bizarre. So it makes me feel good that it sounds like you can move the ball on the Packers defense, but I've said this in weeks prior, and it hasn't come to fruition for whatever reason. So that's something to look out for. But the interior of the 49ers defense is also something I question. When you look at the run stats, they look okay. They probably actually look very good as far as run defense. But the reality is, if you get a team with a physical running back that has an offensive line, interior offensive line that can move people, the 49ers are gutted up the middle. They lost Javon Hargrave. Eric Armstead was not re-signed. He was let go this offseason. And then the guys they've brought in, and Malik Collins is not a great run stuffer. He's more of a interior pass rusher. They don't have the big body up the middle. Greenlaw still has not played a snap. He's not going to play this week. You've got Talanoa Hufanga, who's hasn't played in a long time. He's not going to play this week. So the interior of that defense, all the way from defensive tackle back to safety, is compromised as far as run defense goes. And if you get a team that will commit to running the ball, it can be a big time issue. And so for me, I really worry about Jacobs being able to gash the 49ers up the middle. And I think that he can. So that is something I worry about. But a strength has certainly been this secondary. They've held up very, very well. If Bosa plays, I know that the offensive line is very, very good in Green Bay. They've allowed Jordan Love to have plenty of time, but I think that the 49ers can get home a little bit if that were to happen. And then I'm actually pretty confident in this offensive line as far as a pass protection goes.
Oh yeah, you'll
That's
be fine.
extremely, yeah. I'm very confident because they've actually held up pretty well all year. And then obviously Green Bay is not getting after the quarterback. So that's some of the strengths and weaknesses of the 49ers. It sounds like the matchup might be interesting, but
Makes sense too.
we've come to the time in the show where we've got to make a prediction, Andy. And I am curious to know who you think is going to win this game.
That's really interesting. I haven't honestly put too much thought into it yet. I think I'm required by law to pick the Packers. I don't know if I'm allowed to pick
Hey,
against
you don't
them.
have to, man. You don't have to.
I actually might lean towards a little bit towards San Fran in this one, which I know may make some people in Green Bay upset. I hate predictions because like if you get them right, nobody cares, and then if you pick against the team, like everyone just hates you anyway. So
Yeah.
I never love them for that much. So I do think San Francisco is going to be a little bit desperate in this game. I don't think Green Bay has still found their complete rhythm. I don't think Green Bay's actually been great at home as of late. I think it's going to be a really close game. I think it's going to be a coin flip. It would not shock me if either of these teams won in this game. I'm gonna swing back. I'll say Packers by a point in this one, but I'm very, very close to picking San Fran in this one.
Man, I would love to pick the 49ers. I would. But and it may change. If Bosa plays, I will
1-2. That's why I
revamp.
was kind of swinging back to Green Bay as the Bosa injury. Honestly, he's kind of swung me back.
Right. If he plays, then I would probably change my pick. But right now, I really don't think he's going to. And I don't think Jair Alexander is going to play either. And I think that's a big loss for the Packers. But assuming both of those guys are out, I do think that Bosa being out is the bigger of the two. So for me, I just until the 49ers show me that they can actually do it, they don't have a quality win all year. They don't have a win against a team with a winning record all season long. They've been in these tight games every single game since week 3, I believe, against the Rams. They've had a lead and they've blown that lead or given the opposing team the opportunity to get back in that game. Some teams have taken advantage of it. Some teams have not been able to. If that is the scenario this week, Green Bay absolutely has the firepower to take advantage of it. And I also think that Green Bay has a little extra something that they're playing for as well. They lost to the 49ers last year. I think they believe in their hearts that they should have won that game. And I think they smell a little bit of blood in the water. And they're looking at the 49ers going, we can put an end to their season pretty much right now. And I think they would very much love to do that. So I'm actually going to pick the Packers to win this game 27-23.
Okay. I'll say 27-26. I like the 20. I'll say 27-26. I think it's a little bit closer, but I'll say by 1 point as well. Also, by the way, I think too, one of the things I know it's tough for 49ers fans right now, but just as an outside perspective looking in, I do feel like every year there's that one team that just gets snake bit by a variety of different stuff, right? And whether it's Christian McCaffrey being out basically the entire first half of the season, Hargrave, Hufanga, Dre Greenlaw still not being back from injury, Brandon Ayuk being out for you guys got like a Pro Bowl roster that's sitting on your injured list right now. And obviously now Nick Bosa's out. George Kittle's been out a bunch. Like, I know injuries are never an excuse in the NFL, but I can tell you from like the outside looking in, even with your injuries, I mean, I know Green Bay fans are like, we don't want anything to do with San Francisco. Like everyone in Green Bay is treating this like a very big time opponent in San Francisco still. And the outside consensus, I think, would still be that Green Bay needs to strike now. Because I guarantee, like, if San Fran gets this win in Green Bay, like you said, needing a signature win, I guarantee they will treat it like a signature win. And it wouldn't shock me at all if this was like a launching point for San Francisco season. And all of a sudden, with obviously already getting CMC back, Kittle coming back, if Trent Williams can get back to 100% healthy, Bosa comes back, like all of a sudden you start getting a couple of these guys back. Obviously, Pearsall just got back and he had the whole thing. Like, I'm telling you right now, and I know it may not seem that way from the interior, and you guys again probably obviously know the team better than anyone on the exterior does. But man, if you just all of a sudden get that boost from even a win against Green Bay this week, and can maybe start getting some of those guys back, I guarantee in a few weeks you're going to be seeing probably a much different San Francisco team. So it's felt that way from the outside of like they just can't catch a break, and it's just like every year, and maybe that's just their team this year, right? It's like it's just the team that can't catch the break, but. Man, I still feel like there's a really good roster there if it can just ever come together and actually play together at the same time. And maybe that's not in 2024. Maybe that's not what's in the cards. But man, I still think there's a really good team, coach, roster there that just hasn't unfortunately been able to put it together this year for I think a variety of reasons that are legitimate and sort of unfortunate for you guys.
Yeah, I think the Super Bowl hangover is a real thing. I mean, it's hard to deny it at this point, and it's something that you can't put into words or explain it or how it happens or why it happens, but you're kind of seeing it play out right now.
I think in the I mean, you with the change to 17 games, right? It may not seem like much, but you're playing a full 17 game season, and then you are putting everything you got into that postseason. I mean, this is a tough league. When you get into that postseason, you're going game after game after. I can't remember. Did you guys have a bye last week? Were you the 1 seed last year?
We were, yeah.
Okay, so at least you get like that. They didn't have to go through that as well. But like, man, you still put in a divisional round game against Green Bay, NFC Championship against Detroit, if I remember correctly, a Super Bowl against KC. But you're putting in 20 freaking games of like everything you got into that season, and then you were winning, correct? If I remember, I forget already, but you were winning in that game towards the end, right?
They blew it
at the end, right? Like so to put everything you have into that, and then to have it ripped away from you at the end. Like, there's just no way that's like there has to be an effect of like, can I go do another 20 games of that and put it all in and still not know if I'm going to get the result at the end of it that I want, knowing that we just did it about as perfect as you could possibly do it last year and we didn't get paid off for the result. Like, man, human nature is a real freaking thing. And that is a pain in the ass to have to go through when you've had a situation like that. And then you add on top of that, all the injuries that San Francisco has had on top of it this season. Like, man, that is a tough, it's like 5-5 and kind of in hindsight is like, it's not maybe the worst thing in the world, all things considered, for what you guys have had to go through so far.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see, man. I think the hard part is that Arizona has kind of built this lead in division, and we need them to lose 3 out of their final 4 division games for us to own a tiebreaker against them.
Yeah,
that's going to be really hard to see. So we'll see. Anything can happen. It's not technically over. It just definitely feels like it's over.
I get it.
Brother Bob says,
just a live lucky hat on the side here. No ND. So no, I get that.
Oh, okay.
But,
all right. Yeah. You didn't earn the
no class. No class.
Bob. Yeah. Dave says, I beg we move on from Lyle. RJ fired by Felicia. All right. Brother Bob says, I didn't like Kyle Levy since the Super Bowl loss in 2020. F him. he was at the Super Bowl, so that made it even more painful. Dave Barclay says, I'm with BB. I've been out on Lyle for years. Niner Gang says, Brother Bob, Dave, Jesse, Green at show? I don't know. I think he meant Green Bay show, maybe. I don't know.
No, maybe.
What's up, man? Brother Bob says, I heard Grant. All right, chill out. Niner Gang says, here's 99 cents. And then Dave says, I'd say 53 players are a weakness, but it's Lyle. All right, goodness. Okay. Andy, thank you so much for joining me. As always, man, I really appreciate this. Hopefully we get another chance to do it in the playoffs, man. I think it would be a lot of fun.
I hope that's not the case because I don't want anything to do with you guys. So I disagree completely, but I do appreciate you having me on. You're the absolute best. Thanks a ton.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Everybody go subscribe to his channel. Links in the description. Everybody on his side of the house, thanks for tuning in. Much love. Be back soon. Talk to you later. Peace.